Would you like an opinion on a financial matter you're dealing with? Whether it's about retirement, investments, taxes, or 401ks, Scott Hansen and Pat McClain would like to help you by answering your call. To join Allworth's Money Matters, call now at 833-99-WORTH. That's 833-99-WORTH.
Welcome to Allworth's Money Matters. Scott Hansen.
Pat McClain.
Super glad to be with you today. Both myself and my co-host here, we're both financial advisors. We've been helping people with their financial lives for almost more than 30 years, I suppose, and done this radio program for more than a quarter century. And it's good to be here because it's the strangest of times.
It is. It's actually nice being in the office.
You're in the office.
Yeah, you're in the office.
I know, we are in the office. But most of our folks are not in the office.
Yeah, but every week there's a little bit more and more people coming back to the office.
Yeah. But when you look at with the divisions between people, both politically, then the divisions on COVID, that's just strange. The financial markets, up until this month, have been like nothing on a tear, up, right? Up, and we're finally getting a little bit of volatility on the downside, which is typically a healthy thing in the markets. Why is the stock market 20% higher, roughly 20% higher in 2021?
Is it
our earnings aren't 20% higher across the board?
Is it lack of alternatives?
Our GDP, although it just hit back to where we were, is not 20% higher.
Is it lack of alternatives?
Yeah.
Is there too much liquidity in the marketplace? We'll talk a little bit about that later on in the show.
Yeah, and then, of course, what we saw this last week, the administration and the campaign, it was going to be, here's the tax increases that I want, here are the tax increases I want, and then we saw at least
a number of
the House come with their first draft of proposal with tax increases. One of the things that was talked about was a 40% plus 43.8% capital gain tax rate. That looks like it's not going to be there. But what was proposed is a substantial increase for a lot of small business people.
Yes.
Increase in capital gains, the Obamacare tax being applied to small businesses that hadn't been before, and capital gains, increase in the top tax rate, surtax on higher income people, lower the amount of income before you hit the top bracket. It's really quite
And
substantial.
the division between single and married couples was much narrower than it had been historically.
It's strange.
It wasn't that really strange.
There are going to be
400.
There are going to be some wealthy couples saying, "Let's get divorced."
It was really quite.
You take two professionals. Let's say you've got a couple surgeons married to each other,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
Both with, let's say they're making $600,000 a year or whatever. I don't know. And if we get divorced, our tax structure is going to look much better.
Because they align pretty close.
Well, that's the problem. There's always these unintended. Here's what we do know. This was the first draft. This is not going to be what's legislated.
Yeah.
It's going to go through the sausage making process that it goes through, and it's going to look a little. But there's some signaling, I think, that some things to watch for that are probably not going away. One was a cap on retirement plan contributions,
Which was
it was way up there.
Yes.
$10 million.
Yeah.
Not many people have more than $10 million in retirement.
That was directed basically at Peter Thiel, which is like 1 in a billion that he put $2,000 in, what was it, PayPal.
Maybe 1 in 7 billion, 8 billion. How many people on the planet? Only one, yeah.
Yeah, he put $2,000 in PayPal back at the very, very beginning inside his Roth IRA, and it turned into billions of dollars. Quite frankly, that was written around it. But there is an awful lot of signaling. What I thought was most interesting is that the SALT, didn't seem to be really addressed too much.
Yeah, this is really for people who live in states with income taxes or high income taxes, the ability for them to deduct the
state income taxes against the federal, which is a form of subsidy for those states that have high state income tax.
Well, if someone's in the top tax bracket, federal income tax is roughly 40%, let's call it. And so you live in a high tax state, New York, New Jersey, California, Hawaii. I think Hawaii is now the top. Essentially, the federal government would pay 40% of your state taxes, right?
Yeah, which is a subsidy. Yeah.
You write a check for $100 for your state income taxes. The federal government will give you 40. They eliminated that
under the Trump administration.
Yeah. which was surprising.
Oh, I think that was it didn't. I thought it was really political.
Oh, 100%. Okay.
Yeah. It wasn't surprising. It
was kicking dirt in the face of
the Democratic states of the income tax. Yeah. So
anyway, it's an interesting time, and look, one thing we know is that things go through cycles, right?
And this too shall pass.
Even in the midst of this, when we think that things can't get more strange with COVID. You got the administration now going to, for whatever reason, they decided that we're going to put it on the private sector to get what we want.
Well, I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago. Have we done the show since then? When I don't remember, but I was in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago with my wife, and every restaurant we went into, even a coffee shop, there was someone at the front asking for a vaccine card.
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah,
San Francisco.
Yeah, and I asked the people that were doing it, how do you feel like doing this? And they said it beats the alternative of not being open. Like, yeah, it's a nice way to look at it. They weren't happy about it that they became a police force.
It is, and we will get to the back of the finance. It is such an interesting time. I've got 3 older sisters. I love them all dearly. 3 different views on our approach to COVID, right?
The whole thing.
Yeah, one, she's always been a bit of a hypochondriac, and so she's loved being in, having groceries delivered, wipes off the packages, leaves them out for a while before they come in. I mean, the whole thing. And it's been super healthy.
Are you allowed to go to her house?
I've not seen her.
Okay. You can, but you have to stand in the driveway for 2 days.
And one of the first to get back, like on that end. And then I was talking to one of my other sisters owns a restaurant. I was talking with her this morning, and she was saying that one of the things I love about my job, she says, I've served 30,000 customers since the start of COVID.
Wow.
She's been vaccinated a lot. And she's like, if I get it, like whatever. Right? She's just out there living her life. And she says, I'm so grateful that I haven't been isolated, that I've been able to. She says, there was a period of time we were shut down, but for the most part, we were able to serve our customers. And she says, I love my customers. I love all that interaction with people. And I thought,
in the same family.
Yeah, I love both sisters dearly. And I'm not one who's going to let differences of opinion impact my relationships. And so I don't get it, like, whatever. Like, glad you guys all have your own views and all that stuff. Yeah. Anyway, we all have our own views, and I don't want to.
But it is real. I mean, don't politicize to the point that the COVID isn't real. It's how we're dealing with it that is,
of course, it's
spectrum.
Real. Oh, yeah. There's no question.
Yeah. Some people that say it's not real, I'm like, well, yeah, come on.
There are some people that are way out there.
Yeah,
on their views.
The question is how contagious is it, and what's our reaction to it, not whether it's real or not.
And how do we get through? How do we navigate a society through this, looking at all risk factors?
Not going away. Not going away.
It's not going away.
Not going away.
It is not going away. And unfortunately, it's probably going to become more divisive.
That's what we need.
I'm sick of talking about COVID.
All right, well, let's move on.
All right, how do we start talking about that?
All right, if you'd like to join the show, 833-99-WORTH. That's 833-999-6784. If you have questions about your IRA, 401k, taxes, investments, insurance, life insurance, disability insurance. You don't see much disability insurance anymore. Long-term care, all those questions. But we're not insurance brokers, so we have no dog in this fight.
I don't see much. Most of the people we talk to are nearing retirement.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. So anyway, and this show's primarily about those that are marching from the workplace to retirement, getting to the point where they have financial independence.
But we have other listeners as well.
That's right. We love them too. Yes.
Okay. All right. 833-99-WORTH if you'd like to join the show. Let's go to the calls.
Let's talk with Bob. Bob, you're with Scott Hansen and Pat McClain of Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi, Pat and Scott.
Hi, Bob.
It's a pleasure to talk with you. I really enjoy your show on my morning runs. And I find over the years that I kind of agree with your philosophies more and more. So I figured I'd ask you for a second opinion.
Well, thank you.
On the situation. My wife and I were both 55-year-old empty nesters. I guess describe ourselves as do-it-yourself vanguardians, if you will. Mm-hmm. We have 3 adult sons living on their own. My wife's currently not working, but I'm a federal employee. I'm also a retired Army officer. So when I retire from my federal employment, we're going to be set up, and we're very fortunate to have several streams of annuities that'll more than cover our retirement expenses. And that leads me to the question. We wanted to get your thoughts on a second opinion on what to do with 3 old life insurance policies that we really don't need anymore.
And if you were to die today, what happens to your pension with the federal government job? The one that
my military pension is a 55% survivorship for my wife, and then my federal pension is also a 50% survivorship for my wife.
So you die today, and she automatically would receive 50% of what your pension would be entitled to. Is that right?
Yes.
And I'm trying to figure out, do we have an insurance need between now and pension time, which is quite common. Like, kids are gone, but I've got this income stream, and I've got a pension that's going to come when I retire.
But he's receiving one of those pensions today, correct?
Yes. I already received my military pension, and so if I died today, my wife would not need life insurance, and if she died, obviously I'm still working. I would not need the insurance.
And she has no income stream tied to her life. Is that right? She's not working. She said.
No, she worked on and off throughout the years, but she for Social
not
Security,
saying she's not valuable, right? So I'm just trying to figure out economic interest there. So,
all right. So tell us about the life insurance policies.
Yeah. So there's 3 of them, and the first one it was bought by my parents when I was born in 1960 or 65. It was a $5,000 whole life policy. The annual premium is still in effect of $51 a year. And the dividend from the cash value pays the annual premium, and then it buys additional insurance. So the death benefit on that $5,000 policy is now about $10,000, and the cash value is about $6,000.
Okay.
That's one. And then there's another one that my parents bought for me when I started, when I was in college, and that was a 20-year, $50,000 whole life policy. And after the 20 years, we stopped paying the premiums. The annual dividend on that is a little over $1,000, and the death benefit on that $50,000 policy is now $102,000, and the cash value is $52,000.
And are you putting any more money into any of these? Are you putting any money additional into the $50,000 whole life?
No, because it was a 20-year policy, so the dividend is the dividend is just buying additional insurance.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and then my wife, we bought a $100,000 whole life policy in 1986 when our first son was born, and that has an annual premium of $850. And again, the dividend is paying the annual premium, and that death benefit is $127,000 with a cash value of $33,000.
Okay.
And so I just wanted some second thoughts about what we should do with these policies, considering that it wouldn't change our life at all.
Yeah, right. I get it. You're just trying to be a good steward.
And what did you say the cash value was on the third policy?
$34,000.
Okay. And are the cash values? Are any of the cash values on these policies shrinking on an annual basis?
No, they're increasing because they're all paying dividends.
Yeah. Okay. That was, and the reason I asked that is because every contract is constructed a little bit differently, and so sometimes the cost of insurance can go up in a policy.
Some of these old policies are actually pretty good.
I know what I would do.
You'd keep them.
I'd keep them.
Yeah.
I mean, if I do this return on investment,
before you didn't even run the numbers, you just know.
Yeah.
They were designed at a time when, first of all, mortality. We weren't living as long, right? So you go back to even a little time back in 1986, we're living longer than we were in 1986. Now, granted, our life expectancy has shrunk pre-COVID. I think for in 2019 because of other lifestyle choices we've got. But so the cost of the insurance things have changed, and then secondly, it's the interest rate environment. Their investment environment is much more challenging today. So some of these old contracts, just the way they're structured, they're pretty good deals. And if you look at if you project out between now and the time you're going to die, some of them, these old ones, not that bad of return. And if you were to cash them in today, the question is what
would you do with the money? And
what's
you'd
the
have to pay taxes on it. So I'd leave them alone.
Yeah, if I do the return, it looks like they all earn about 3% a year.
That's not that's the cash value. But you've got the death benefit.
You want to look at the death benefit, and then you want to look at it as a tax-free, which actually then you drive it up to the equivalent of a taxable.
Yeah, what I was thinking, so that's interesting that you say to probably keep them, because I was thinking of maybe to cashing them in, and then looking at a second to die universal life policy.
No. Why would you do that?
Well, we have considerable amount of money in Roth IRAs and my TSP and a brokerage account that's all transferring to our sons. And our pension, we have 4 annuities that are more going to cover our expenses.
So why do you need life insurance?
It was a way to transfer actually more to our sons.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I guess if you're modeling it in such a way that you're saying, look, when we retire, our net worth's going to continue to grow because we have such good pension income coming that if we lived a normal life expectancy, we're going to be able to have X dollars to pass on to our boys. But if something happens, we both die young, we don't have quite as many assets. So is that what you're thinking?
Well, yeah, we already, we have our IRAs are all 100% Roth, and we intend to pass them to our boys. We have $1 million in a brokerage account that's, taxable, that we've just, we're buy and hold investors, dollar cost averaged over 30 years. And we don't have any need for any of that.
That's right.
Because our pension's going to cover.
So why do you want life insurance?
So how much do you have in the Roth?
We have $800,000 in our Roth IRAs.
And how much do you have in TSPs or pre-tax?
TSP is $700,000, and that's half Roth, half non-Roth.
Okay.
Wow.
Any other assets?
And then we have the $1 million outside of, in a normal brokerage account.
Now you mentioned that,
and your home's paid for, I'm assuming.
The home is paid for, yes.
So in essence, if you were to buy a second to die life insurance policy, actuarially speaking, if you and your wife are of normal health, you own second to die policies. You own a first to die already, because you're more likely to die before your spouse is if you're the same age. I don't know the economics that I could actually justify a second to die. Normally, a second to die policy is used in estate tax purposes, to pay estate taxes. If I were you,
incidentally, currently it's $11 million per person. Under this last week's tax proposal, that would drop back down to $5.5 million per.
Yes,
person,
if that passes, which is anyone's guess. Which is surprised me that it wasn't more. So. If you were my little brother, and you would be my little brother, I have a 55-year-old little brother.
So I know that Pat's been in the business a long time when it used to be, if you were my father,
I know.
If you were my uncle, if you were my older brother, now it's if you were my little brother.
If you were my little brother.
That's why guys.
I would put 100% of my investments in equities, right? I'd keep these life insurance policies. I would live through that, and I would live off the annuity stream of those pensions.
If that covers all your income needs, then
that's how I'd manage this portfolio.
That's definitely what we're doing, and so you would keep the 3 life insurance policies just because they're.
Look, you can't replace these things. You're not going to get a yield in fixed income as well as these on a tax-free basis. You're just not going to.
Okay.
On the after-tax basis.
Yeah. And by the way, this is not an endorsement out there to buy a new life insurance policy, because the life
Unless
insurance
you're buying it for
policies,
estate taxes. If you told us your estate was worth $50 million and you wanted every dollar to go to your kids, second to life insurance might be a great solution for you.
Yeah. The last life insurance policy you bought was in 1986, correct?
96 for my
96.
wife, yeah.
Okay. So 1996. Those policies today are not anything like those policies in 96 are not like anything like the policies today. The way they were underwritten. The way they were underwritten. You could not get a policy like that today. So it's not an endorsement to the rest of the listeners or your people that sell life insurance that we endorse the purchase of universal or whole life insurance. What it is an endorsement of is that you own something, you've paid the cost associated with it already. It is got a better return than what you could get with the same dollars in the marketplace today if you take those dollars and either invested it in a new life insurance policy and or a bond portion of your portfolio. So that's why you leave it alone. That's why you leave it alone and go 100% equity the rest of it, and you'll be perfect. And by the way, thank you for your service.
Yes. And thank you for listening to our program as you go for your runs.
Thank you, guys.
All right, have a good
Appreciate
one.
the call.
You know, it's interesting as you made that comment, Pat, about like we often say if you wouldn't buy it today, don't own it, but that's not always true, right? Because there are times if you've bought something, it might have been something you can't get today.
Correct.
But it also, there might be some tax simplifications and whatnot. As an example.
Or the costs associated with owning it have already been borne. You have already eaten the costs associated with owning it. I'm sorry.
I was just going to mention front-loaded mutual funds, sales load, which is how mutual funds originally started. They were sold. A broker would get a commission, and roughly 5 cents on every dollar you invested would go to commissions. You pay this large load up front. So most financial advisors don't recommend loaded mutual funds. Obviously, Allworth doesn't recommend clients buy front-end loaded mutual funds. But the fact is, if you already own it, if you paid the cost, you've paid the mission to the dance, let's say, you're already in there, like, forget about what the cost was. That's irrelevant now. Now we're looking at just purely going forward. And because I see sometimes, Pat, I know you have as well, someone's owned a mutual fund for 30 years.
Yes.
Long time. Tremendous amount of capital gain built up inside that. Some other advisor recommends them getting rid of it. I've seen because it's a loaded mutual fund, and I'm thinking the load was paid 30 years ago.
That's not the driver anymore. The first thing you do is you quit reinvesting dividends and capital gains. That's the first thing you do. And the second thing you do is you forget the cost associated with owning it. You think about the cost associated. You forget about the cost associated with buying it. You think only about the cost of owning it, whether it's got an A behind it, a B behind it, or a C behind it.
Yeah, and like oftentimes people, they tend to accumulate assets over their lifetimes, right? And it's not always that well organized. And oftentimes they'll come to a financial advisor as the complexity gets larger in their life. And what often happens is they've owned a position in something for years, whether it's a mutual fund or an individual stock. They've had something for years. Might not be the best today, like wouldn't necessarily recommend today, but because of the cost associated with exchanging that for something new, it makes sense to hold it and to build an allocation around that particular holding.
Or if you're charitably inclined, that's the first thing that goes to the charity.
The very first thing.
The first thing that goes.
Even if it's $500 a year you can give $500 of worth of mutual fund or stock.
That's what financial planning. That's really what financial planning is. So, I mean, I own things in my portfolio that I wouldn't necessarily buy today, but the cost associated with getting out of them is so great that you're just like, it's not an A+, but it's a B.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with some of these old life insurance policies that we wouldn't recommend whole life to most people. today, unless there's an estate planning need, estate tax need. But there are. If you got something you've held forever, might not want to get rid of it because it's
might make sense.
Might make sense to keep it. We're going to take a quick break here. Before we head back, take this break though. Just want to let everyone know we've got workshops. Our 7 personal decision point. This is if you're nearing retirement, thinking about retirement. We've got workshops designed specifically for you. It looks at things such as how do I figure out how much income I need to replace? How should I look at investing? Have my portfolio set up? What's my tax structure going to look like? And we've got these workshops running in Denver, Cincinnati, and virtually as well. Saturday, September 18th through Saturday, September 25th. So combination of in live, combination of virtual. Just register at the homepage at Allworth Financial. They're free, allworthfinancial.com, and I think you'll learn something. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll continue on with calls. This is Allworth's Money Matters.
Can't get enough of Allworth's Money Matters? Visit allworthfinancial.com/radio to listen to the Money Matters podcast.
Welcome back to Allworth's Money Matters. Scott Hansen. Pat McLean's turning on his microphone.
Pat McLean.
Start back too quick. Hey,
you should give me a heads up. I guess
we are sitting in a studio. That, by its nature, would be a heads up. You're at the seat, in chair, right? Okay, headphones on.
I was distracted. I'm easily. You've been a business partner about a long time.
There's been enough shows, Pat, where I'll look at. I could tell Pat's like, not very often, but every once in a while, maybe if the.
I can bet
we've all know the bad callers over the years. Right? Yeah. Every once in a while, it's just not a very entertaining call.
I can get distracted.
But speaking of, if you'd like to be part of our program, we'd love to take your call. Maybe you'd like a second opinion from us on something you're considering, or you've owned some assets for a while. You're looking at the right kind of way to have things structured. You're considering about maybe you make some change this year, concerned about tax changes for 2022. Whatever the case may be. To be part of our program and to schedule a time to have a call with us, 833-99-WORTH. Call 833-99-WORTH, and we will love to take your call, answer your question. Numerically, it's 833-999-6784. And let's talk with Michael. Michael, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hello, Scott and Pat. Thank you for speaking with me. I really enjoy your podcast.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Insights and advice. So my question today is about international diversification, and specifically the idea of having a portion of one's portfolio with an overseas custodian that might have assets denominated in a foreign currency. For example, maybe a Swiss bank that has your assets in Swiss francs. The motivation is that having some of your assets outside the local financial system might be prudent, and having them in another country like Switzerland, it diversifies your risk of having everything in one market and one currency, and all based on custodians in one financial system.
How much money are we talking about?
And I get to Pat's. I think to Pat's point, it's like. If you're someone that's got $100 million, $1 billion,
yes.
Is it worth that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. If you've got $200,000, is it worth the pain?
No, obviously not.
Sure.
Because I think what you might be looking at. I mean, because if it's talking about you want to maintain some sort of purchasing power, so it's purely currency. There's other ways you can play that game without having to set up an account in a foreign bank. On the other hand, if you have a very high net worth and you're thinking, I'm not sure what the future holds. I'm not sure I'll be in the United States the rest of my life. Maybe there are some other things to look at. then and really only then would I start considering something like you're considering.
And why don't we ask some of the oligarchs in Russia or some of the capitalists in China what they have done with their money in terms of international diversification?
Well, just go to Manhattan and you can see all the penthouses that are selling for $50 million or $200 million. That's
Right.
exactly where those.
And so we use an extreme example there of international diversification in order to get the money out of the home country. And what you're saying is, well, if it might make sense to do the same in the United States. So back to the question, how much money?
Sure. So a little about the particulars, but my wife and I were retired USA citizens. We reside in California, but my wife, she has inherited assets, and they've been reported and all that, but it's in what you might call a hotspot foreign country. And some of the assets aren't liquid right now, but over time we could try to liquidate them. And then the question is, do we bring it all back to the USA, or maybe we look for some of it overseas? And for the sake of argument, let's say this is in the few $1 million range.
Okay. Well, a few $1 million. So it's got us I couldn't agree with Scott more.
I mean, it's if you've got so much money, like you're going to escape and you can take your private jet somewhere and maintain your life somewhere else. Other than that, I don't know. I don't have any money in any overseas banks.
I don't either. I have diversified portfolios. I have there's multiple custodians.
And it used to be that. Here's what happened. Like, people would put money in overseas banks and not report to the federal government, to the IRS, what the transactions were. And when you're a U.S. citizen, you've got to report those regardless. Unless you want to renounce your citizenship, you must report those. And for years, these banks said, well, we're going to stick to privacy here. We're not going to disclose anyone's information. Well, the challenge is
Panama Papers were leaked. And it was over, and it was UBS and a couple other large
big settlements, and now all the major banks now that's like they will share with the IRS any U.S. citizens' transactions. So that game, and frankly, it was not legal what people were doing. They also gave people an opportunity to make good on it. If you want to come forward, the penalties aren't going to be as bad. If you don't want to come forward and make good on your past debts, then we're going to throw the hammer down on you.
Yeah, they said repatriate. But we're not talking about that for Michael, because you said that you want to be 100% above board with the U.S. government and the IRS. I don't see a benefit to you of keeping money. I see a tremendous benefit if you had hard assets in a hot spot to get rid of those hard assets and move them out of the hot spot, especially if more than 40, 50, 60% of your net worth is tied up in hard assets. The same,
and how it would work is, depending on what you're talking about, I try to get my money out of there as quick as possible.
As quick as possible.
I would not want any money in Venezuela. There's lots of countries that.
And we talked earlier, Scott made the reference to the Chinese business people and international business people and Russian oligarchs owning penthouses. The reason they like hard assets is because they can't be moved, right? And it's easy to obfuscate ownership in a hard asset in the U.S. if you're a citizen of a foreign country. At the same time, if you own a hard asset in a hot spot, it's difficult to move. So if you're really worried about that asset, you want to get out of there as quickly as you possibly can, regardless of market conditions. Right? And then bring it back to the U.S. and invest it appropriately.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry with Swiss banks or any of that. No. But I would try to get out of there, if you had...
And the franc is so expensive right now, too. It's the currency.
Yeah, but you can always... That's true. But if you wanted currency exposure anywhere in the world, you can take currency exposure through...
Other means, financial products.
Yes. Yeah, but there's no benefit. You would making your life unreasonably complicated to actually hold foreign assets. It's hard enough if you own multiple assets in multiple states, just filing tax returns for that. So appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. You mentioned we're talking about Switzerland. My son did a semester. He went to Boston College and did a semester in Geneva, Switzerland, and everything there is about double or triple the price of anywhere else. It was so expensive. It was like hard to fathom.
Like if you went and got a Coke, it was like
$6 or whatever.
Really?
Everything double or triple. I don't think I went to McDonald's when I was there because usually it's not my favorite restaurant. But going out to lunch was a cheap lunch would be $20 for nothing.
Wow.
Everything was extremely expensive.
Taxes?
Well, he didn't pay any taxes. He was a student, so I don't. Okay. Well, I tell you, on taxes, if this tax proposal goes through, which was for they put it out there this week. If that goes through, our high income earners are going to be at a higher tax rate than most of the world. Even these socialist countries.
Yeah,
much higher.
I actually, when I read that, I thought this is really bordering on socialism.
Bordering. Yeah. Well, anyway, we don't get too political on this program because we like to help as many people as possible. Let's talk to Furlander. Furlander, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Yes. Hello, Pat. Hello, Scott.
Hi.
I'm a first-timer. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us, Furlander.
What can we do for you?
Well, I'm retired in my mid-60s. My wife and I are both retired. We are actually looking at the best ways to budget our current equities and investments. We're currently selling our home in a state where I'm not going to miss the drought or miss the fires.
Okay, the smoke.
And where are you moving to?
And state of Virginia.
Okay.
Where the taxes are lower, so my retirement pension will go a lot further. We make over 6 figures secured in our retirement. And I have roughly, I self-manage about $150K and have about another 200 that is just sitting in cash. So I need to know how to figure this out will be the best way for us as retirees to reinvest as though we're still making those mortgage payments over the course of a 5-year plan, so where we can build our dream home and determine what state and what location that would be in, and just live mortgage-free for a while and just, digress a little. Downsize, of course.
Oh, yeah, so you're retired. So let's get this right. You're retired now.
Have been since 2018.
Okay,
you have kids?
We do have grown kids. Okay. We have about 7 grandchildren, excuse me.
And
all our children are grown and have their families.
And your spouse is retired.
Yes, both retired.
Correct.
Pension of 6 figures.
And so you have pensions of over $100,000 a year, and you're living comfortably on that. Did we hear
Correct.
that? And you're not using any other these monies that you have in you said self-managed the money in cash. You're not using any of that.
Well, I'm not using it at this point. No, one is locked up, is managed through one of the local banking institutions, and the rest I self-manage on my own.
Okay.
About $60K of my own.
Got it. And
$150 of my own.
So you're selling your house.
what's the value of the home?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I've got, what I've listed, of course, I'm getting over offers over that. So we're in good position on that.
What do you have it listed for?
About $990.
And what do you owe on it?
Half of that.
Okay.
And what's a house in Virginia, your dream house that you were talking about in Virginia, going to cost you?
It's nothing. It's paid in full.
So you already own a home in Virginia?
Yes.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
It's already paid for. It's paid in full. You own that house outright. You could move there tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh, good for you.
Nice.
Okay, what's your question for us?
So my question is, as a retiree,
sounds like you've got everything planned perfectly.
No, it's not. But it seems as though in theory, but we're doing it on our own. So I'm like, okay, when is a good time for us to look at how do we look at our diversification, planning of that? When would be a good time, or what other avenues could we utilize to reinvest the proceeds from the sale of the home, other than just putting it in a savings that really nothing or money. That doesn't do anything for any of us, right?
Correct.
The market, September is the worst time in the last 20 years.
No one knows that, but we'll go with that.
No one can predict that, right? So I'm just looking at what would be the best avenue for us to look at too, as far as investment.
All right. So here's the way, and you've both are taking Social Security, correct?
Negative.
Are you eligible for Social Security?
Negative.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. So you've got $100,000 a year in income, and right now you're making a mortgage payment. You're moving to a place that you're not going to make the mortgage payment. Your standard of living is actually going to go up. You're going to walk away with approximately $450,000, $500,000 from the proceeds of the home. So we look at that. You're going to have $850,000 in investable assets, of which you're not going to require any income whatsoever. But we'd like that money to be available for special large trips, African safaris,
whatever.
Right?
I don't want to oversave and underlive.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right. So with that in mind,
And the thing that you've got going for you, Verlander, you've got phenomenal pensions that have guaranteed cost of living adjustments.
and you have no debt once this house is sold and you're back in Virginia.
I mean, if you can tell us what your health's going to be like the rest of your life, this would be super easy, right? So we need to, it's that balance of making sure that we enjoy our quality of life today and have those extras if we make it to 90.
Verlander, you're sitting in the fabled catbird seat, okay? So what you would do if you were in our office, we would look at this, and I would probably put an allocation together, tax-efficient allocation together, based upon your risk tolerance of 60% equities and 40% bonds and cash. That is probably where I would go with
And
this.
it might
40.
probably, but it might be other discussions like, you want to earmark the risk. We're all human, right? Here's the challenge.
Right.
It's $850,000 of what you're going to have by the time this house is sold, counting your cash. So you're invested. Markets go through cycles. If it's $850 and you lose 10%, who cares? When it's $850,000 and it goes down 10%, suddenly that's a lot of money. So what ends up happening is psychologically, we can end up getting attached to our portfolios. It's always fine when things are going up, but it's challenging when they come down.
Correct.
Studies show that people tend to make poor choices during financial downturns. So part of the process is trying to determine what's going to work best for Lander and your wife. What's the best structure so that whatever portfolio that when you come into with a rational mind, doing your research, your due diligence, the whole process, you make that decision. When the financial markets do what they do and go crazy,
they will,
to ensure that you don't abandon that financial plan.
Because the worst part of a good portfolio is the investor.
Always.
The worst part of a good portfolio is the reaction of an investor. I'm going to tell you a little personal story here. Okay. Personal story. I have been married to my wife for 35 years. So we're 20 years. Right. When was 2008? Right? How long ago was that? 2008.
13 years ago.
13 years ago.
13 years.
You are in the finance business, and it's pretty basic math there, Pat. Just to let you know.
Okay. I was reminiscing about...
Let me get my calculator. Let's see.
Scott, I was reminincing about my 35 years of marriage in my mind.
You did have a twinkle in your eye. Yeah.
I was thinking, 35 blissful years.
Blissful years. I got 38, so I know I can amen with you, brother.
So my wife is... I bought my first stock when I was 15. Right? I didn't have a lot of money, but you could mail a check.
Is this a long life story?
It is. How long's the rest of the show?
Let them go. Let them go. It's all good. We got time.
So in 2008, 2009, the market's falling. I come home, and in the laundry, I walk in, and right on the counter is our account statements from the brokerage firm at my firm with a large note that says, I've been going over our portfolio. There are a couple of these funds that aren't doing that well. I think we should possibly get rid of it.
Your wife's financial advice to you.
To me.
It's like,
what did I do with that?
Sold Moderna.
You probably bought more.
So, but the point being is that there's reactions. So you need to make sure, in Scott's point, you need to make sure that you end up with a portfolio that you can live with the long run.
That's right.
And it may be 60% equities. It may be 40%.
Fortunately, you've had a lot of experience owning investments because you're mid-60s. It's not like
a little.
Yeah, well, it's a little more than. It's not like suddenly you just You got $500,000 from your house that you've never actually invested before.
And part of that is if you're doing it yourself, you've got to know yourself. If you're using a firm, then you've got to have great confidence in the firm that you're using, that they know what they're going to be.
I mean, obviously, you're going to be well served by working with a quality firm that help you with this process. Even just putting together the plan. So I would recommend you talk to a couple of firms. You're great.
You're doing great.
Good problem to have.
Great. So appreciate the call.
Yeah.
And we're sorry that you're leaving the great state of California.
Oh, sure. All right. Let's continue on here with Allworth's Money Matters. 833-99-WORTH. If you want to join us, we're talking to Janet. Janet, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi there.
Hi, Janet.
Hi. Hello.
Hi.
What can we do for you?
Well, we're pretty well set financially. My husband is already drawing Social Security, and he has an annuity through his former job. And in next October, we'll have an annuity that starts paying out. What we're trying to decide is he's 64. I'll be 64 next month. I own a small company and I draw a small salary. Should I start drawing Social Security next month or should I wait?
And when you say you own a small company and you draw a small salary, do you have any employees in this company?
Yes.
How many employees do you have?
Like 9.
Okay, and what's the salary?
I'm assuming it's either an S Corp or an LLC or a partnership, not a C Corp. Is that right? S Corp. All right.
S Corp, correct.
And how much do you draw in salary?
About $18,000
a year. And how much?
It's irrelevant really what the salary is because it's a pass-through entity, not a C Corp, an S Corp. So
how much total income comes from it? That was my second question.
Yeah. On the K1.
We had a couple bad years this year.
We had a couple bad years. This year is better, so maybe $60,000.
Okay. And what was the prior to the bad years, the total income?
Prior to the bad years, total income was
200.
About 200.
So Scott, and
we also rent the building to ourselves.
Okay.
We own the building.
Got it. And so the question is,
well, I mean, you really can't take Social Security until you hit your normal retirement age because of the wage limitations.
And then, so I have a question for you, Scott. The S Corp, the pass through on the dividend still counts as
tax.
Yes, it's the same
self-employment.
thing.
Yes.
Yep.
So it doesn't really matter what you put down unless you're a C Corp. If it's a pass-through entity, S Corp, LLC, partnership, your Social Security tax is based upon the profit of that organization, of that entity, that S Corp. That's where you pay your self-employment tax on, FICA and the 15.3%.
Oh, okay.
So you're looking at me strange, Pat.
I did not.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't recall.
I do.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go with that.
99.9%
Okay.
I'm wrong every once in a while, but I'd put money on this one.
Okay. I just don't recall.
Yeah, because it has to do with whether it's either wages or self-employment income. Her self-employment income is not what she decides to take out of send to herself each week or month. It's what the business makes. So until you reach your full retirement age, you can only earn about $19,000 a year. Otherwise, you start losing your benefits. So it's not going to make any sense whatsoever for you to sign up.
And by the way,
your full retirement age is probably 67 or 66 and a half or something.
But by the way, this $18,000 on a business that generates $200,000, if you've kept it there for years and years at $18,000, it doesn't pass
I dropped it to 18 when we were having trouble.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Because otherwise,
we lost a lot of people. It's residential property management, and a lot of clients got scared when rent control laws in California were enacted, and now with the eviction moratorium, and that both of those coupled with the current crazy real estate market, we're losing a lot of accounts. And just because how we are as employers, we've never laid anyone off in our 33 years. So we're kind of overstaffed.
Okay.
So rather than lay someone off and
by the way, I've lost my confidence.
Down,
I'm starting to second guess myself.
Yeah. So Scott, I think that
second guess myself.
I think you. So the question there is, look. So we know this. Your income is mostly likely going to go up once it recovers, and that is reason enough not to start the Social Security. So
correct.
Because that was that $18,000 was what I hung on is because it seems to be too low. So that's reason enough because that's the maximum essentially for Social Security. But here is a financial planning tool. You're 64. You should be prepping this business for sale.
Exactly.
You should, if you need to bring in a broker or go to a couple association meetings and find out who's rolling up these property management firms, because you own a large asset here. And at one point in time, my guess, if it was making $200,000 a year at one point in time net, that it was probably worth $1 million, maybe $1 million plus. That's a 5 multiple on an EBIT of 200,000. And especially if you're overstaffed. So if you were sitting in one of my financial advisors' offices, we would be talking about your assets, and we would include this as a major part of the assets. And how are you going to exit this asset? That would be my biggest concern. We could talk about Social Security.
Considering that, yeah.
You should. Yeah. You got to do more than consider it. You need to start the journey. And there are firms out there that specialize in the sale of property management businesses to larger roll-ups. And that's the conversation you should be having, which is, what do I need to do to get the most value out of this asset? And I know you called about Social Security.
Because what we've seen, suddenly there's
that question answered.
There's a health issue, right?
Yeah.
Suddenly there's some major health issue, some life issue.
And you need to, if you plan on selling it in the next 6 months to 4 years to 5 years, you need to start working on it today. So I would start that conversation with people out there that actually specialize in the sale of your business. So I appreciate the call.
Yeah, unfortunately. And I'm backtracking my 99.9% confidence on because I know you can structure it where you've got your salary at one thing and avoid the Medicare tax.
Avoid the Medicare tax. So so Scott, that's why it is a spontaneous show. We don't actually get to hear any of the calls before they come in.
Well, that's typically the financial plan, and you just got a couple weeks that you go and you do all the research and you're 100% confident. So anyway, we're out of time. It's been great being with you. We'll see you next week. This has been Allworth's Money Matters with Scott Hansen and Pat McClain.
This program has been brought to you by Allworth Financial, a registered investment advisory firm. Any ideas presented during this program are not intended to provide specific financial advice. You should consult your own financial advisor, tax consultant, or estate planning attorney to conduct your own due diligence.